Okay, I think we'll get started, and we've been promised it will get a little cooler in here, so apologies for the heat. My name's Jennifer Cooke. I'm Director of the Africa Program here at CSIS, and I'd really like to welcome you and our panel here to CSIS this afternoon to talk about the upcoming elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There's been really a flurry of interest in these last couple of years, kind of mounting interests in conflict minerals, in the devastating reports recently released on the levels of rape in Congo. I think a growing U.S. domestic constituency that's recognizing the magnitude of the crisis there. And some, although I would say not enough attention on these upcoming elections that are slated for November of this year. Very important elections. The 2006 elections were, the heavy lifting was done by the international community. This time, very much more falls on the shoulders of the Congolese themselves. And I think it's a big test of where the country is likely to go. These are obviously incredibly challenging elections. The election schedule is extremely tight with a constitutional deadline in early December of this coming year. The logistics alone are extremely daunting. Again, in 2006, the international community did the majority of the heavy lifting. They're much less engaged this time. And we're going to hear from Pastor Mulunda, who I'll introduce in a moment, where we are in the preparations, the current election calendar, his big outstanding concerns and challenges. But we also have to look at these elections in a much broader political environment. There are many things that lie outside the Electoral Commission's purview and control, but we do have to look at those things in assessing the credibility and the legitimacy of these elections. President Kabila's popularity reportedly has been declining in the last years since the 2006 election. And I think moves by the ruling party indicate first that they're quite aware of this decline, and second, if indications, and I'll be very eager to hear from Chairman Mulunda, that they have little intention really of ultimately ceding power, or little expectation, should I say, of ceding power. I think Chairman Mulunda will be aware of many of these issues. I think the constitutional changes in January that eliminated a second round of elections and really puts the onus on the opposition to come together is a change that took place just 9 months before the election is troubling. I think changes in the electoral law are still outstanding, still uncertain, and I think we'll need to watch for those. There are questions, too, about the independence of the Electoral Commission. And in fact, Pastor Mulunda, as a founding member of the ruling party and a close confidant of Kabila, questions about in perception or fact, and in some ways perception is more important, about the independence there. We're very eager to hear from you on these challenges. I promised him we would ask the tough questions, and I think he sees this very much as an opportunity to respond. And so I'm very glad that he's been willing to come. We're delighted to welcome him here. He's the chair, as you know, of the Independent National Electoral Commission in DRC. He's worked previously with Bishop Desmond Tutu and the All Africa Conference of Churches, first based in Togo and then in Kenya. He's held various positions with this organization, including Executive Secretary for International Affairs, and was responsible for transforming the youth desk of the AACC in his work in Senegal. He is a founding member of the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy. He's been involved in successive peace processes in DRC. He is an ordained Methodist minister and received dual master's degrees from American University right nearby, and from the Wesley Theological Seminary in International Peace and Conflict Resolution. He's the author of The Reconstruction of Africa, Faith and Freedom for a Conflicted Continent. He tells us that after these elections, he's going to take a well-deserved break and pursue a PhD at his former alma mater. So we may welcome him to Washington in not too distant future. In responding to Chairman Mulunda, we're delighted to have Barrie Freeman, who's Deputy Regional Director for Central and West Africa at the National Democratic Institute. Barrie has managed a diverse portfolio. I was just with her in Nigeria, for example, across the region. She spent 15 years with the U.S. State Department working on political, economic, and democracy affairs in countries across Africa. We're really glad to have her here to talk a little bit about the bigger political context, perhaps some of NDI's nascent work on DRC. We also have Daniel Laurent, who is Program Officer for Central Africa at IFES. IFES is providing technical assistance in civic education in DRC Congo, one of the few streams, I think, of U.S. engagement in the elections, and will tell us the progress there and his assessment of how that's working, what they are hoping to accomplish in a very difficult and challenging environment. Finally, we have Mark Schneider, who's Senior Vice President at the International Crisis Group. You should have all seen, if not read, the Crisis Group recent report on the election preparations. You have copies there, Mark, perhaps, but they are on the web. Really a very challenging look at these elections with some pretty incisive recommendations going forward. Chairman Mulunda obviously has read the report, and I think we'll have an interesting discussion here on his response, and I think Mark will ask some of the tough questions going forward. Anyway, that's a long-winded introduction, but again, Chairman Mulunda, welcome. We're very glad that you took this opportunity to come here. I think it's, as I said, it's important that the U.S. Get much more engaged and focus on these upcoming elections, and I think your presence in Washington will help do that. You're welcome to stay there or speak from here. Okay, yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me time to share with you. And I'm surprised you know me too well.
The beauty of the internet. Yes.
Sometimes they give... No, I'm pleased to be here to share with you what's happening in the Congo now, especially concerning the elections. I'll be limiting myself to that which is my task and my duty. I want, first of all, my starting point will be what kind of crisis we have experienced in that country since independence. That country has suffered from the crisis of legitimacy. We have had leaders who were coming into position from meetings to meetings. They will come, there's a conflict or war, they meet in such a city, they share power. That was the pattern of Congo. Since the negotiations in South Africa, Sun City, the Congolese agreed to go through a transition and have a constitution and organize the first multi-party elections. And that took place in 2006. Those elections were a landmark of saying enough is enough. From 2006 onward, anyone who wants to come to power in the Congo should come through election. No more war, no more coup d'etat, no more negotiations in the meetings or in the capitals in the world. By agreeing to do that, the Congolese people took that decision, and which we must respect. All of us, the world has to respect that will of the Congolese people. No one gave us a chance to organize elections in 2006. No road, no infrastructure. But we stood firm and had our election. And I pay tribute to my predecessor, Mr. Labe Marumaru and the team. They did what was not expected. And today, I can be proud to introduce myself as coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo, because we have had election and have gone through a democratic process. Today, I'm called to continue that process. We have had our first elections, now we are going to the second elections. The challenges are still there, but I have no right to put my country back to square one and kill all the efforts made by the international community. They spent billions of dollars for us to have elections, and our role today is to continue that process, to have that country used and prepared to the democratic process and exchanges. So we'll never accept any plan that can push us to go back to negotiation and talks. No. And that is very, very clear. Is the position of the people of Congo. We need our rulers to be elected by the people. By accepting to do this job and the challenge, the first thing which is uncompromising to our side as the CENI is to go back to talks. This is why when we took over office, we started talking to all the people, political parties, all of them, meeting them and talking to them and giving them that message. We need to organize these elections, and this year. We cannot accept to kill the effort made by the international community or the money that came in and reverse to sharing of power in meetings and long transitions. We have a lot of challenges. And the first challenge, I think, is to have a file, a voters register. I think this is the first one. I found the process, I didn't stop it. Now we are moving very well, though time is short. I think by mid-July, we'll be finishing. Our aim is to reach 31 million of voters, as compared to 2006, we had 25 million. With the increase of the population, we are planning to have 31 million of voters. That's the first test we're going through. Today, we have reached 54% of the expected voters, meaning that by the time we finish, by latest July 9th, we can have the expected number. The challenge is big because we find the machines are old, the distances are long, they have reduced the number of registration stations. We are trying to increase those. We have just received 1,500 new machines for registration. Myself went to Lome to borrow 1,000 more so that we can reduce the distances and open new centers. And we hope that our first test will be that one of organizing a new voter registration file. And the second challenge we have is data transmission. If last time we wasted a lot of time, they used, after people are being registered, for example, in Maniema, it finished long ago, I think 2 to 3 months ago. But the problem is that people should go in the rural area by bicycle, collect the data, bring them, transmit them. So we have decided just to do things by satellite. By VSAT, we have invested money, and they're putting on a system with over 208 antennas in the country that will allow us, even during the election, the same evening we start giving partial result until we finish. That will ease people from the tension of waiting. We have invested in that, and that is going to happen. But the biggest challenge remains logistic. The country is big. Last time, as the elections were taken care by I think 90% by the international community. This time 60% by the government. So we do not have a clear sign that logistics and transport will be taken care of. We are still talking the United Nations, putting up a plan of transport of goods, especially ballots, to different polling stations and to collect them. Financially speaking, we are encouraged this time. I hope this will continue because the budget is divided into three. We have the pre-election period that concerns the voter registration. On that one, I say thank you to our government because they have paid 100%. On what was planned, we received the money and they are continuing. But the international community is still going slowly. They have executed, I think, at less than 50%, but the government has paid. The bill on that one, we are continuing and hope that they will continue. They will pay the balance that we can continue. We are seeing a slow support from the international community, and I hope the government will continue giving us the necessary support so that we can reach the aim of organizing these elections. Now we come to the calendar. When we came into office, there were speculations. As you said, perception can be important than the reality. People can live and have war through perceptions. Thank God I studied that, so I'm not afraid about perceptions. I know how to explain them. We're accused of trying to separate the presidential elections from the legislative elections. And that study was done before us by our predecessors. When we came into office, we said we cannot take any decision now. We need to sit with all the experts from the international community and ourselves. Because in our building, we have our peers who come from the international community. And we lost most of them in the crash that took place. We were coming from Lubumbashi from our meeting. And too bad, almost all of them perished in that crash. We worked together to find out a calendar. We're open. Can we put things on the table and define a clear calendar? When we put everything on the table, we find that first of all, with the voter registration, we'll finish the registration mid-July, and we have a complete file. We need to call back the National Assembly to come in order now to share the seats. After having the fact, they have to come now to say this place we have to have 1 MPs or 2 MPs. That's the role of the National Assembly. So they have to come back. When we have that, we need to call for candidates for parliamentary elections. That one will take us at least 1 month. When we have all the list, we need to print ballot papers. It is not electronic, there are papers, each person with the picture on top. So last time we had 7,000 candidates, and this time we're expecting the double of that. And those papers, they have to be printed outside the country for credibility. They are sensitive papers. To bring them back, to put them in different voting stations, and to start the vote, that thing normally, when they say that the parliamentary election can logically take place next year, they were right. Absolutely right. On that one, they were right that we can postpone the parliamentary elections up to February next year. They're absolutely right. For the presidential elections, we don't have any problem. We can have 20, 30 candidates. I call the candidates by August 4th, September I have my elections, November I publish, December is in. That was very clear and very simple. And I don't have a deadline concerning parliamentary elections. I have a deadline on presidential elections. But myself, we asked a question. Will it serve the country? First of all, they changed, how can I qualify this? In a very surprising way, the Constitution. In less than 10 days, where the Constitution changed from 2 rounds to 1 round. And many people till today are crying on that one. And you come, because we have constraints, and you separate presidential elections from legislative, because the guy who will win the presidential will automatically pull to himself, to or herself, the majority. So you have an artificial majority. Will that bring peace in the country? That brings stability to the country. So we said no, we sat as an office, said no, we cannot do that. We need stability in this country. We are coming out of a conflict. So let us make an effort to strangle ourselves, to put them together, so that people can vote the same day, and we have at least a kind of logic and normal majority defending themselves. The ruling party, they wanted to have that one, because for them they say, okay, if our president is elected, we will go have the majority. We said it's not normal. But logically speaking, the way was to separate. But we took that decision, said, no, we put them together, we cannot separate them. So we came with that date, say we are having presidential and legislative elections joined together on November 28th. It will request us to work a lot. We need a lot of support for us to have peace and stability. I've spent all my life waiting for peace in that nation. All my life, taking risk, going to the east, taking guns and so on, from Kinshasa, Katanga. And I know one of the root causes of war is stolen election. If you steal somebody's victory, we can go to war. So if we have bad elections, we can go to war. So I'll be working against my own work and my own conviction by doing stuff that can bring war. So we bring that calendar to I can't read it now, to have presidential elections on November 28th. And the elect president will be known on December 6th, the last day of the term of the incumbent president. We'll give 20 days to the Supreme Court if there are some claims or problem to solve them, so that on 20th of December, the elect president will be sworn in. We have tried to be within the Constitution. The Constitution calls that we have to call the election, to call for the elections 90 days before the end of the term of the incumbent president. When you go from December 6, 90 days is August. So I'm calling for presidential candidates to give the candidacy on August 4th. I'm calling that in 90 days. So I'm within the Constitution. We'll bring the candidacy and the work of them. We are calling the polls on 28th. The only problem is that we are on the 6th, we have an elected president. I have between the 6th, because normally it should have been sworn in on December 6th. But because those constraints are put here, we have to wait. Do we go postpone the legislative up to next year and have chaos, or request 20 more days from the Supreme Court so we have things done this year? That's what we did. We have applied to the Supreme Court to give us those 20 days so the president can be sworn in December of this year. I'm not going to put details because I know that you have questions. I will clarify many things within your questions that I'm waiting for now. We have had cries, requests of postponing the elections. Yes, we have problems, but they will not stop us from having these elections. I think our problems are not worse than the one they had in 2006. We have problems, but we will solve them. Financial problems, I think this time our government is taking a good step. We hope others will join. To go and postpone, especially the presidential elections, I can't. It's impossible, no matter what, to have those elections. Because I cannot bring people back to negotiating. No. If West come to West, I'll separate them. I can push the legislative next year and have my presidential elections. But I don't want that. I want peace in that country. So this is I need the support of everyone else involved in the process for the Congolese people to have their elections on time. I spent last year in the eastern of the Congo. I collected more than 15,000 guns. North Kivu, I've been everywhere myself. Walikale, Tuchuru, Masisi, wherever, I was there myself, collecting guns. Today the security situation is better than years back, because I collected 15,000 guns from there. So I know what I'm talking about on planning these elections. I can't say that things are not quiet. No, they are not quiet. We still have some bandits, some people there doing the things, but generally speaking, I'll have my elections there. And today, if you look at the statistics, I want to stop by there. My time is gone. Kinshasa, we're expecting 3.5 million of voters. No, this is the wrong one. Excuse me. I want the Today program. Giselle, this is an old one. Yeah. Kinshasa, I'm expecting 3,000.5 million voters. We have 219 registered. Bakongo, we were expecting 1.4 million, 1.486 people, but we've got more than that, 1.487, 100% of expected. Bandundu, we're expecting 3.5 million of voters. We have registered 1.6 million, and they still have to register up to July 8. Equateur, expecting 3.5 million. We have 1.7 registered already. So they are continuing the registration up to July 7. Province Oriental, expected 3.9 voters. We are at 1.7, 45%, and they are still continuing the voter registration, and we got new machines, the figures will go up. North Kivu, we are expecting 2.9 million. They are now at 1.3 million registered. So we are at 44%. They're still continuing registration. South Kivu, 2 million. We have already 968,000 registered, 48%. Maniema, we were expecting 759. We have closed there. We have 874. We have 115%. The number of people registered. Katanga, we are expecting 4.2 million. We have 3.2 already registered, and they are continuing up to June 9th, and they'll close. We hope that they reach that figure. Kasai Oriental, we're expecting 2.4. We are at 1.5. Kasai Occidental, expecting 2.4. We have 1.9 million. Today we have 54%. Out of 31 million, we have registered 16,754,807. That means 54%. We still have over a month of registering people. So you see in Kivu, the people are being registered. The only place where we do not register people, it's in the territory of Walikale. There's a place we can't go neither by road, nor we have to go except by helicopter. And the UN had problems with helicopters. Now they're solving it to bring the registering machine there in Walikale. People can be registered all over the country. We are doing the voter registration. It means security-wise, with the help of the UN, doubling up the numbers and control, and also continuing the peacemaking, we'll have our elections. So what we need is your support. I don't want to reverse the gear and go back. We have these elections. Our mandate is to do that, and we hope that the financial support will come, because let me give the last figure. On the voter registration, for the international community, they pledged 64 million. They have only given 28 million, 44%. The government has pledged 102 million. They have paid the 102 million, balance zero. So on the presidential elections and legislative elections, the international community pledged 84 million. They have done none up to this day. The government has pledged 178 million. They have paid 14 million, 8%. And that one, we need that money urgently to start ordering the ballot, what we call the Kinkaire electoral, start ordering now. We need to start to place all the orders now so that by November, everything in its place. So the preparation is going well. We are determined to go ahead. We acknowledge that we have some challenges, but we cannot reverse and go back to that system of power sharing in the offices. No way. That one is our commitment. We need your support to that because it will be a reverse for the Congolese people. We need to consolidate that democracy by allowing our people to continue challenging themselves through ballot papers, not through guns or negotiations. I think I'll stop there. If there's some questions, I can respond to them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chairman Mulunda. The figures on the funding that's been forthcoming are pretty alarming, the pledges versus the delivered funding. Seems like that's going to be a major concern for you going forward. We'll get back to that in the question and answers. Let's turn to Barrie Freeman. You can stay where you are or come up, whichever's okay.
Thank you, Chairman Mulunda, and thank you, Jennifer and CSIS, for giving me the opportunity to represent NDI today. 2010 and 2011 have seen and will see a number of high-profile elections across the African continent. And citizens are coming out in large numbers to register as voters and exercise their franchise in these elections, regardless of the political environment, the credibility of election commissions responsible for conducting them, or the commitment of political parties and candidates to respect legal frameworks and eschew violence. Like people everywhere, the DRC's citizens want to choose those who would govern them. Developments in North Africa and the Middle East are powerful reminders of how citizen discontent can manifest itself in the absence of credible elections and functioning political institutions. Unlike the DRC's transition elections of 2006, the 2011 electoral process is firmly in the hands of the Congolese themselves. And I think the burden rests pretty heavily on the chairman's shoulders at this point. The role of the international community, and in particular the UN, is much lighter now, as these elections are expected to consolidate gains made during the past 5 years and further the DRC along the democratic path of its own choosing. If the 2006 elections marked the DRC's break from the past, the 2011 elections are meant to show the way forward. Congolese stakeholders must agree on the rules of the game for this election, produce their own referees, and ensure that there are mechanisms in place to promote stakeholder dialogue and political compromise. The stakes are indeed high. Credible elections in 2011 would lay down a marker for more representative government institutions and could lead to improved public accountability and political stability that has been so sorely lacking in the country and that are so necessary for sustained economic development. A flawed election process will at worst lead to renewed large-scale conflict and at best keep the DRC on the status quo path of poor governance. The challenges facing the country, as everyone points out, are enormous. Many in and outside the DRC question whether elections can in fact be held as scheduled on November 28th before the end of Kabila's mandate on December 6th. The slow pace of voter registration, scheduled to end on July 1st when the process is only complete in 2 of the country's 11 provinces, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, raises questions over the ambitious electoral calendar. The country's electoral law is still under review in the National Assembly. Renewed incidents of violence are cause for concern, not just in the troubled East, but in other provinces as well, including Bakongo, Equateur, and Bandundu. Changes to the electoral framework seen as favoring Kabila have raised fears that the electoral process may be manipulated well before Election Day, including the constitutional amendment allowing the president to be elected by a simple majority, thereby scrapping the need for a second round, and the replacement of the more inclusive Independent Election Commission, the CEI, with a seemingly more partisan Independent National Election Commission, the current CENI. The CENI itself is underfunded, as the chairman pointed out, especially in regards to donor commitments. This is most glaringly manifest in the faltering voter registration process, where CENI workers in some parts of the country have allegedly demanded compensation from citizens attempting to register, as they themselves are not getting paid regularly. Chairman Mulunda deserves credit for opening up a channel for dialogue with political parties. Given that the electoral calendar could slip, regular and transparent dialogue between the CENI, political parties, and civil society will be the only way to keep the country's electoral stakeholders engaged throughout the process. Regular dialogue mechanisms, used effectively in many countries, including Ghana, Guinea, and most recently Nigeria, can be the forum where stakeholders find ways to compromise and reach consensus on any necessary changes to the election calendar, and where discussion can be held on the management of election results. They provide forums for parties to negotiate codes of conduct, an initiative underway but still incomplete in the DRC. Civil society must be fully empowered to monitor these upcoming elections alongside members of the international community. Citizen election monitoring builds voter confidence in the process and can serve as a deterrent to violence, particularly when early warning systems are put in place. Well before the elections, civic groups, along with the CENI, have an important role to play in disseminating current and accurate information about the election process itself, as well as about the parties and candidates contesting. The government's disturbing treatment of civil society leaders, opposition figures, and the media makes it difficult and potentially dangerous for such activities to be carried out, and calls into question government commitment to a participative and open election process. Côte d'Ivoire's recent election provides a cautionary tale for the DRC. Gbagbo and his party went into the election fully expecting to win, even as the alliance between Bédié and Ouattara indicated that he might lose. But while a political party code of conduct was in place in Côte d'Ivoire, and even as Election Day proceeded calmly amidst high voter turnout, Gbagbo refused to accept defeat, setting the country on a destructive course that ended ultimately in his arrest, and hundreds of lives lost, widespread property damage, and the further polarization of the country. He's left a tall order for President Ouattara to address. More worth emulating is the experience of Nigeria, a country with twice the population of the DRC and corresponding logistical challenges. Last month's elections, though far from perfect, were nonetheless seen by Nigerians and Nigerian watchers as a breakthrough in a country where each successive election since the end of military rule had been worse than the previous one. Two factors contributed immeasurably to their success: strong leadership at the helm of the Electoral Commission that promised and followed through on a commitment to transparency, and high levels of citizen engagement throughout the process. While the violence that broke out in the northern part of the country after the election cast a shadow on these otherwise credible elections, the main challenger, former military ruler Muhammadu Buhari, is now pursuing his allegations of fraud through Nigeria's courts. Electoral stakeholders in the DRC must make hard choices in the coming months. If the elections are to be held on time, then all must play a role in maintaining momentum and contributing to their success. If a postponement is necessary, wide consultations must be held before decisions are announced, and clear remedies must be articulated to avoid a constitutional crisis when Kabila's mandate ends. The international community should step up to the plate as well with both financial and technical support. The CENI requires both, especially as it is widely acknowledged that the transfer of critical know-how from UN experts in 2006 was far from complete. Support for both citizen election monitoring groups and international observers will be critical as well. Organizations must recruit, train, and deploy monitors to observe and report on all aspects of the election process, including the post-election period. There are a number of innovations that groups around the world are using to monitor elections. Just seeing what was possible in Nigeria was an eye-opener, and I think that the Congolese are every bit as tech-savvy as Nigerians. The CENI must expedite the issuance of credentials for all observers and give them unfettered access to all steps of the process. And most importantly, take into consideration their observations and recommendations to strengthen the conduct of these elections. I'm going to stop here. I think I've just tried to put out there, you know, with any election, there are so many different legs to the stool, and it's something that we saw in Nigeria last month. You know, you can get one leg of the stool right, and you've made huge gains, but you've got to get all the other legs right, too. And in the case of the Congo, this means the Election Commission, political parties, civil society, international community, and security forces all working together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Barrie. Let's turn to Mr. Laurent. You must stay over there, okay.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for the introduction and for hosting this event. It's an important discussion to be had. I'm going to talk briefly about the DRC Voice project that we've been implementing since September of 2009. The objective of the project is to conduct civic and voter education awareness-raising activities throughout the country. It's funded by USAID with complementary funding from now DFID, the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Canadian CEDA. The project initially was designed in 2 phases and started in 4 provinces, the provinces of Bandundu, Katanga, South Kivu, and Maniema. The first phase envisioned bringing technical assistance to the Electoral Commission through bridge trainings. Bridge trainings is it's a format that we use often in many of our countries where we produce training materials around a series of modules that are uniquely tailored to the electoral context. The other aspect of the phase included providing subgrants to civil society organizations through a series of cascade trainings that would bring civic and voter education to the community at large. The main tools that we use in this are the boîte à images, which is a really neat way of providing civic and voter education that doesn't rely on written text. The second phase of the project is very similar to the first in that the main activities are the same. However, the second phase will be focused on the presidential and general legislative elections. So it's the phase that we're kind of entering into right now. Throughout this process, there's also a media component through our partner organization, Search for Common Ground. And Search for Common Ground is producing a series of radio and television spots that are going to be broadcast throughout the country, as well as a comic book and a song contest. Real briefly about the complementary donors, the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs has contributed funding to expand our activities to other provinces, including Équateur, Kasai Oriental, and Kasai Occidental. The project envisions a series of forums focusing on the importance of the revision of the voter register, journalist trainings that we're doing, or that we have done, I guess, in collaboration with the CEI, to reinforce trainings being conducted in Kasai Oriental, Kasai Occidental, and Equateur, also focused on the RFE, or the revision to the voter register. Motorized caravans in the 3 provinces, as well as a media campaign focusing on radio spots about the voter register, as well as the production of posters, T-shirts, banners, key messages, etc. And that is set to end at the end of June of this year. With that, we have contributions from the Canadian government focusing on civic education on the RFE, the voter register in Kasai Occidental, primarily through Search for Common Ground. We're also doing journalist trainings in Bandundu, Katanga, Maniema, and South Kivu, which are the core provinces that we're working in right now, as well as information on the voter registration. The CETA component also included an aspect on logistics, and we're working on figuring out how to move some of the civic and voter education materials that are being produced in Kinshasa out to the provinces, and we're hoping to use CETA funding for that. We've also done a series of corrections and reprints of civic and voter education materials that had originally been produced by the CEI. And last but not least, obviously, the DFID component of the project, which we're in the process of signing this week, will further extend activities to additional provinces, the provinces of Bas-Congo, Provence Orientale, and North Kivu, focusing on the general elections with some activities in Kinshasa as well. Through this, we're going to be expanding our CSO subgrant mechanism to extend these grassroots mobilization and sensitization campaigns through 110 civil society organizations. In addition, we're also doing further work with Search for Common Ground on radio spots produced under the Voice program with USAID and extending them to these additional provinces. As everybody has been highlighting, the primary challenges has been in the area of logistics. It is definitely something that we continue to run against in terms of producing the materials, but also getting them into the provinces that have been targeted. But that's just a very brief overview of the project, and I'll leave it to you guys.
Thanks, Daniel. We can get back to you on kind of what you're seeing and hearing too. Sure. I think on the ground in the question and answer. Let's finally turn to Mark for an overview of the ICG report and recommendations.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate the opportunity, and to my other colleagues on the panel, and particularly to Reverend Mulunda for. Got it now. Particularly to Reverend Mulunda for being here with us and giving us his view of where things stand. Clearly, this second election is a crucial one for the future of the country. And that is why the crisis group issued its report at this time, because we still think that there's time to avoid what we believe will be the worst outcome, which is an election that is flawed, an election whose government that does not have credibility, and therefore a government whose legitimacy is questioned. And it's at this point that we suggest strongly that the issues that have been raised, that both the CENI and the other political actors and the international community need to clearly come together and establish for themselves together what are the benchmarks that absolutely need to be met in order to come to a judgment early enough so that an adjusted calendar can be established. If it turns out, for example, Reverend Mulunda indicated that he hoped that by mid-July that there is a voter registration list that is adequate. It seems to us that you need to now say this is what we're planning to do if that does not occur. We've heard from Barrie and from Daniel the importance of transparency. We haven't seen, as our report recommends, that the voter registration list, when it's provided, that it be put on the internet so that it can be audited, so that the political parties and the opposition and civil society can examine it to come to determination whether or not it is flawed and whether there are serious parts of the country that have been, not by intentionally, but simply that have simply not been covered, and what would need to be done. Reverend Mulunda indicated the determination not to have an unconstitutional transition period, and I think that there may have been a misreading of the report. What we're essentially saying is, as your calendar provides, there already is going to be a transition beyond the date when the current government's mandate ends. And that's, at this point, is something like 15 to 20 days. But Article 73 of the Constitution provides that the vote should take place 90 days before the president's mandate ends. And at this point, you're still not going to have you're actually not going to have a non-final list of the candidates until the day after his mandate officially ends. So and what we're suggesting is not that there be a change in government, that simply, again, that there be an agreement about during that time period until everyone finds that that the election can be held in an effective, credible way in which the vast majority, hopefully, of the population have the opportunity to have their vote respected. That until that time, there would be a simple transition, as in most parliamentary governments, where the current regime would undertake the necessary minimal actions until that election takes place. But the point is now to put into place a process to assess where things are. At the moment, the budget for the elections is clearly far from being met, either from the international community standpoint or from the government standpoint. The budget, as I recall you stated in the chart, which is very helpful, says that about 8% of the actual cost of elections, the government's portion has been made available, and virtually nothing from the international community at this point. So the question of the budget, the question of the electoral law, that still remains at issue. The concern about logistics, where you indicated that you hope that the UN could play a significant role in terms of the transportation of materials, both in terms of getting the ballots and then bringing them back, those are issues that still have not been resolved. And so I would add training of the poll workers, the identification of the poll workers, assurance that they're not partisan, that they're being selected as part of a process that involves civil society, that it's not simply one party determining who will be manning the tables at different parts of the country. All of those issues are issues yet to be fully, at least perhaps they're known, but they're yet to be fully disseminated and discussed. Several of the points that you've made, opposition political parties have been very unhappy. The change in the constitutional provision, moving from a runoff election to a single, first one past the bar, that was clearly opposed by many of the opposing parties. The question about how you resolve these issues, Barrie made a quite important point. The CENI has made an important step in engaging with the opposition political parties, establishing some mechanism for ongoing mechanism for civil society and the political opposition and the international community to examine the set of indicators that will let everyone know that we're moving on a calendar that's possible to be reached or we're not, and then coming together to decide how we move forward from that point. That's essentially one of the fundamental issues that we think needs to take place. And also I would add here from the standpoint of the crisis group that we're extremely concerned about some of the acts of some security forces against journalists and other activists. We're concerned as well as at the increase recently in violence in the Kivus. Minister of Education had a convoy that was attacked. There's been some indication, again, something that we've written about and argued, that the failure to adequately integrate the CNPP as well as the FDLR in the proposed effort to end the existence of armed, violent, illegal groups in that part of the country continues to result in violence. And that violence also makes it extremely difficult to think that those regions of the country are going to be able to participate, and the citizens there, to participate fully and adequately in the electoral process. And these are issues that hopefully one needs to resolve. We haven't seen yet the definition of an electoral, what I would call in what the report calls an electoral security plan that provides a province by province, district by district, sort of electoral voting site by voting site analysis of who's going to do what when, in order to ensure the security of materials going to those sites, and to ensure the security of voting in those sites, and then to ensure the security of the ballots coming back. Those are issues that we think that continue to need to be resolved. I'm not sure about the time, but I think I probably should stop. But let me just say that it seems to me that the crisis group attempted to say, not this is what needs to be done and changed today, but this is what needs to be put in place so that you're at the point where you can ensure that the worst possible outcome, a flawed, chaotic, violent, and not credible election, does not occur. And that's the process that we believe needs to take place now, to put in place the conditions and the benchmarks that will enable you to ensure that that does not happen. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot on the table there. Before I turn to the audience, I'm going to turn back to Chairman Mulunda to respond, I think, to all the very good comments from the panelists. Turn off the mic.
Okay. I want to thank all the colleagues on this panel for sharing. The concerns you are raising are true, but I think we need to clarify some perceptions here. First of all, I need to affirm the commitment of the CENI to organize free and fair elections. It is our commitment to do that, and we will do that. But there is a misinterpretation of the Constitution, which I want to clarify here. On Article 73, I will read first of all in French. That's what people are going about the Constitution. In French, it says that le scrutin de l'élection du président de la République est convoqué par la Commission électorale nationale indépendante 90 jours avant l'expiration du mandat du président en exercice. The election of the President of the Republic is called by the Electoral National Commission 90 days before the end of the mandate of the current president. It's called. To call is not to organize. The big difference. You call, you ask people to come and give me your name. You want to be president. And that has been done. On August 4th, we are calling for that election, for people to come and give the candidacy. So we are on time. And there won't be any transition. Articles, there is nothing which is empty. There will not be any vacuum of power. No. The Constitution has provided for on Article 70, it says, le président de la République est élu au suffrage universel direct pour un mandat de 5 ans renouvelable une seule fois. À la fin de son mandat, le président de la République reste en fonction jusqu'à l'installation effective du nouveau président élu. The president of the republic is elected directly for a term of 5 years, renewable once. At the end of his term or her term, the president stays in office until the new one is being elected. The term of the incumbent president ends on December 6th, and December 6th, the new president will be known. The incumbent will stay until there is handover. So we don't need any transition or any organization. No, our constitution are provided for that. This has to be very, very clear, our constitution. So there is no vacuum, even if you have the election in January, because the constitution says that there is provision that he stays in office until the new one comes in. That has been a misinterpretation even from politicians in the country. When I said I'm within the law, within the constitution, that's what I meant, because this is the interpretation of the constitution. Concerning the legitimacy of the government, this government is legitimate, my friend, you might want it or not. It has been elected from the polls. The people of Congo elected this government, have been elected. So let them be put out by the people from the elections. You cannot question them, because they've been elected. They're different from the government from Sun City or wherever. Now, let us, this is what I'm saying, let us give the time to all these people to elect new ones and to disqualify those are disqualified because they did not provide. I don't give all the details. After my meeting with the political parties, we organized a meeting with the UN, MONUSCO and us. We brought everyone, all the political parties together, ruling party and opposition, civil society and journalists. We came up with various recommendations. And one of them, I want to put up the Code of Good Conduct, which IFES is involved in helping us to renew the former Code of Good Conduct to have a new one, which will be binding this time. Myself, I call myself a referee and ready to distribute red cards in that committee. And I'm doing, I just did it. In Loja, if you heard, I closed the registration offices for 2 weeks. Simply, the administrator of Loja wanted to have his people within the CENI. I closed for 2 weeks until the time the guy was suspended and removed from there. I'm trying to keep that credibility that I can deliver the good and the world is watching me, and above all, God is watching me. On that one, we are putting together a mediation committee, which is made by the UN, church leaders, civil society. Myself, I'll be the chair in that one, and some diplomats. How can we resolve some of the disputes outside the court? Because I have found out that there are things that we can solve through dialogue, and the diplomats who are credible, the members who are credible. That committee will be put in place. All these committees will be put in place after the voting registration. We have delayed that for that. And last thing, the security. During that meeting, MONUSCO, we invited the general of the police, and they're working together for the training of the police during the period of elections. We want also to have the civilian surveillance of the elections. One spoke about the member of the CENI being not paid and almost going on strike. That is the part of the funding of the international community. The voters, the one working in the registration office, are being paid by the budget of the international community. And they do not do the job. Last time, we were forced to take the money from another grant to help the international community because people were not paid. So there are things that, because you don't know what is happening in the ports, because the payment of all the workers, temporary workers, and the training is funded by the international community to the PACE program of the UNDP and the international community. And that's why we are facing some problems. Sometimes people have to be paid tomorrow. The procedure is so long, you have to go through this, through papers. Those who are working in the voting polls, they don't know that. They want to be paid and on time. And sometimes there is a failure on our side. Sometimes people are slow, preparing up lists and so on and so forth, and the days pass, people are not paid. We're forced to intervene in Equateur, to intervene in Katanga, now in South Kivu, by releasing the money received from the government to pay on behalf of the international community. Those are some of the issues we need to resolve. But one thing which is very important, we need to have good elections, well organized. That's very important. And I was saying, if I find myself with a problem, I will call the politicians, I'll talk to them. But for the time being, we have a logistical problem, and we need to continue on our move to go ahead. But if there are problems, I'll go to them. We'll talk to them. I'm not communicating with them through medias. I talk to them directly. So we have agreed on that dialogue, and that should continue. And we have put permanent committees, CENI with press, CENI with political parties, CENIs with women, and so on. And those groups will be dialoguing to follow up the process. So that's my first comment now.
Great. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, just having come from Nigeria, Barrie's point is so important. I think, you know, Chairman Jega, one of the things he did was create this kind of culture of constant consultation and really listening, integrating recommendations from civil society, but also imparting information on what was slipping, so that when they got halfway through a vote on that first Saturday and they had to cancel, a lot of people's first inclination was to say, oh my gosh, it's just business as usual again. But then people, because they had developed that relationship with Jega and that confidence in Jega, were, you know, actually ultimately admired him for coming out and saying, look, we're not ready, the ballot papers were messed up. And I think that was, so that did not just happen on that day because of the integrity of Chairman Jega. It came out of that whole long process of consultation. Mark, did you want to add something?
If I could, just a couple of things. One is that we agree with you, and that's why I said there may have been misinterpretation, that if it turns out as a result of logistics, failure to receive the money on time, the voter registration list isn't available, that the term, that the president would not be replaced, that the president and the existing government would remain during that time period until the election took place and the next elected president was able to be inaugurated. The second was, you didn't mention, and I would be interested as to whether or not, you seem to say that when there's a problem that you would call together the political parties to engage in discussion with them. And it seems to us that it would be perhaps avoid problems to have a permanent mechanism with the political parties to meet every period, let's say every 2 or 3 weeks, and then to avoid something occurring and then calling them. The other is that I was curious whether you intended to put the voters list on the internet so that the political parties and others could say, these people are dead, these people are there twice, etc.
Okay, go ahead, and then we'll open up, I promise.
No, I forgot the question of the list. We finished already the registration in Maniema and in Bakongo. I'm happy to announce that last year they had to take the whole file to take it to Europe so that they can double check, double registration, and so on and so forth. But I'm pleased to know that there is a Congolese company, young computer engineers that they have put up a program to control both the fingerprint and the double registered. So they're working already on the file of Bakongo. Before the end of this month, I'm going to publish the list, first of all, not on the internet. No, people in Bakongo don't have internet. I want to put in the same voting registration offices. I want to put the list there, invite the people, come and check if your name is there. By June, it will start with Bakongo. And then I'm going, after Bakongo, I go to Maniema. Once the people, they check, they contest, we adjust them, we correct, then we can publish on the internet. So June this year, I started Bakongo and then Maniema. My colleagues, they were very wise to start province by provinces, and they're working already on it. I'm not going to wait until the end to publish the list. By June, we start with Bakongo. They're working on it. When we finish Bakongo, we go to Maniema. After Maniema, we go to Katanga, Kasai Oriental. As they were going, registering people, that's the way we will do it. So June, we get the first list. When I finish on the ground, now I can put for the internet. So people can react and they're going to get it. I'm concerned about that, working on it.
Thank you. We've got about 20 minutes for questions and answers, so I'm going to take a few questions at a time, and then we'll come back to the panel. Why don't we start here?
John Harbison. John Harbison, Johns Hopkins CSIS. I want to focus on some of the things that Barrie and Mark said, especially, and even the chair, that building stakeholder commitment and the rules of the game and bringing civil society in, party negotiations and so forth. Seems to me some of that should have happened over the last 5 years and not just in the context of the election. And so my question really for, I guess, the entire panel is, has enough of the consensus building, enough of the conflict management, enough of the constitutional reform or whatever taken place to do the things you're talking about? Or is it a question of elections first and ask questions later?
Okay. On that same side, and then we'll come over here, further to the back, gentleman in white. I don't have glasses, so I can't see who you are.
Thank you.
If you could introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, my name is Emile Bula, and I'm a medical doctor. I'm from the Congo. I just want to ask 2 questions. How many questions are you? Am I allowed to ask?
The preference is 1. If they're very short,
one.
you can squeeze into.
Okay, the only question I want to ask the chairman is about the partiality of the election. From my own perspective, the chairman is the founder of PPRD, which is the ruling party now in the Congo. And up to date, The chairman is the personal envoy of the President Kabila to other presidents. Last time he was in Togo to bring a personal message from Kabila to the president of Togo. How can a president of a CENI, which is supposed to be neutral, is taking side with one party? And how can the result of the election be credible if he's having this kind of attitude? Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Let's take one more here in the center. It's to the other side.
No, thank you. Good day, Uele. What role, if any, does the chairman of the CENI ascribe to the presidential debate?
Can you repeat that?
Will there be a presidential debate? What role, if any, do you ascribe to the presidential debate in a young democracy like the DRC and a post-conflict country? Why were there not, to your knowledge, a presidential debate last time? And what does the electoral law say about it? I know that the law is still to come. Thanks.
Okay, let's start with those. Daniel, I wondered, do you want to say anything about kind of attitudes on the ground on this, and just to start, and then we'll come down the panel?
I think the work that needs to be done is just huge. I think that we can do a lot of civic and voter education from our standpoint, IFES' standpoint, but ultimately it comes down to, as people have mentioned, credibility. And I think that without a unified front in the work that we're doing, we run the risk of losing popular credibility in the process itself. I think it can be done, but we just need to be organized about it. And this is echoing things that have been said so far on this panel. The international community does need to move forward, as do all the parties involved. But from what we've been hearing on the ground, it's okay. This is good and everything, but will it really count? Will our votes really count? And that just is a very basic way of saying that there's just a lot to be done. Yep.
A couple of things. One, the answer to the question is no. Over the past 5 years, there clearly was not enough done in terms of the reforms that one had hoped. In fact, the reason that we're in the situation that we are now in terms of the logistics being and the electoral calendar being so cramped is that the government didn't come together with the opposition political party and with civil society early on to resolve some of these questions earlier, to get an electoral law put forward, adopted, and a calendar organized much earlier. The chairman has an enormously difficult and we would say almost impossible task as a result of that failure. And that's of great concern. And it also relates to the question of security. Clearly that thus far, and this is not just the government, this is the international community as well. We have a UN peacekeeping mission there whose fundamental responsibility relates to security. And the fact is we have not had security sector reform. There continue to be illegal armed groups in many parts of the country who have not been either disarmed and demobilized or in some form integrated in an effective way in which they are no longer operating, even within FARDC, as separate entities. And so there is a great deal that has not been done. I think that I'll stop.
We get it. No, I'm just
Yeah, just to echo what Mark said in response, I mean, clearly not enough done. But I think between elections, it's always kind of a pipe dream in democratizing countries that after an election, there's going to be all this reform and all this work done. It just doesn't happen. The election's over, people move on. So it doesn't mean, though, I mean, we're still 6 months out from this election. I mean, as I said, I mean, Chairman Mulunda has started a process with parties. I think that there's certainly time for that process to be expanded, to be regularized, to, I think, even just to publicize it. I mean, not to belabor the Nigeria experience, but I think one of the things that they did there was kind of to open up, really to, you know, allow for a lot more transparency. The public knew what was happening behind the scenes in ways that they didn't know before, and what that did in effect was you know, increase kind of public confidence in the process, so that when problems arose, they were dealt with. Sometimes they weren't really dealt with that well, but people kind of recognized that there wasn't a lot of you know, kind of chicanery going on behind the scenes, and that's what people worry about in any election in any country in the world.
Thank you. I join my colleagues by saying that nothing was done as preparing the people after elections. That was that thing that pushed me to start this dialogue, because I believe that without dialogue, without talking to the politicians themselves, nothing can be done. And I had a name to sell and the credibility to establish. It was important for me to meet all the opposition leaders, to talk to them, renew my commitment, and listen to them. This calendar today has not brought a lot of contradiction, because it's a result of that consultation. After Lubumbashi, we produced the first draft of the calendar. We gave to the political parties, all of them, look at this. We explained our limitations, our problems, and our plans. We gave them 1 week, and each of them wrote to us back, this remark on this, on this, on that, on that, on that. And then after that, then we came out with this calendar. So we brought in a spirit of dialogue and consultation, which will continue until the end of the process. That's our commitment, and we'll do the same way. Even we're waiting for the Supreme Court to endorse the calendar. Once it's done, I want myself and him to give them officially, and also to go to universities, explain the law, the interpretation, so that even the students can understand where we are and why we're doing this. I always avoid talking about myself. I think it's good I clarify this. I've never been a founder of PPRD, my friend. I'm telling you here. During the Congolese dialogue in Sun City, I advised the presidential group, you don't have to go with party state. You have to have your own partisan party to compete. I have dealt with like MPR. I recognize in front of the world that I advised them to do that. When they came to form officially the party in Uganda, I refused to sign. I said, no, I'm a pastor. I cannot sign a party. You can go and, when they're trying to oppose my name at the parliament, they checked everywhere if I signed. During the first election, they proposed my name as because I'm popular in Katanga. I brought peace there. They wanted me to be there as the candidate for the party. I refused. So I'm not the founder of MPR, of paper. That should be very, very clear. Because they're putting that label on me in order to discredit me. Check the papers, I'm not there. I advise them. I'm not founder member of PPRD. If you can talk in some close circle, that sometimes I was meeting with them, I say, I'm not part of yours. I'm bringing my expertise. So this should be very, very, very clear. I told you that we had problems in Kinshasa about the voting machines. In 2006, Togo had the election. We lended them 2,000 machines to organize their elections. And our machines came back spoiled. We have a complaint that we had few machines, 7,000 machines only, and the distances are long. It was the concerned political parties and everyone else. We need to have new machines. We ordered new machines in Belgium. Our supplier said that due to time constraint, they can provide 1,500 pieces, and the last pieces came the day I was leaving. We were short of machine, and the same supplier in Brussels informed us that the government of Togo bought last year 1,000 machines. They bought their own new machines. So I requested a letter from the president so I can go and get those machines. I went to borrow machines that were brought in Congo and present, and now those machines are being used. The machine belonged to the government. I need to ask to the government. When they came to borrow ours, they came through our government. So I'm not an envoy, my friend. I went to do my job, and the machine came, and today we have over 17,000 machines on the ground to do the voter registration. So I want that to be very, very clear. My last word is that I want to do my work and do it very well. I'm an independent guy. I'll do my work. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do apologize in my introduction then for getting that wrong.
You say that one, affirming it, it's terrible. I think that we should be withdrawn.
It is withdrawn,
Yeah.
and I do apologize. Let's turn to Mvemba here. Oh, the presidential debate. Yeah.
Gode is please like me. I think in all democracy, debate has to be organized. Last time I was so disappointed to say they withdrew the debate. I hope in this current law, they'll put it as a must. It's important for people who are going to lead the country to debate and to explain to the people what are the vision. To escape from that is to escape from democracy. If it depends on me, that debate has to be there as a must, as the first step.
Mvemba, and then we'll go behind, and then we'll come over to Tony.
I'm Mvemba Dizolele. I'm with CSIS. Thank you to the panel for the discussion. I have a question which mostly goes to Mr. Mulunda. I sense that there is a level of arrogance, when we talk about legitimacy, that came from 2006. A government that was put in place in 2006, that has failed, really, when we talk to the process. We have 6 months before the end of the presidential mandate, and we're still trying to justify what the Constitution say and how long it can stay in power. So I think it's important we take stock and say, we failed miserably. In 4 years, registration should have been done. In places like Equateur, places like Kasai, everywhere else, what were we waiting for? We didn't need international community to do that. Right? So today, as we move forward, let's be a little humble. Power sharing doesn't mean bring everybody in the government. When the government wants to change the Constitution, when it suits its designs, they do it. But when it comes with promoting democracy and human rights, and the credibility is not legitimacy. Just because you're elected, you're not credible in the eye of your people. So let's take stock of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mvemba. Let's turn to the gentleman in the tie and vest.
Thank you very much. My name is Jacques Mushagasha. I am with the Coalition for Free and Democratic Elections in Congo, an organization of the Congolese diaspora in the DC area. My question is to Chairman, and it's regarding the voter registration. The last census we had in Congo, I'm a Congolese from Kivu, was done in 1980. Now today we are 4 years after that, and we are doing elections without any census. We did that in 2006. Now today you are doing estimations, saying that last year we had 26 million. This year we have 31 million. What's the basis of those estimations? And the second question, I don't know if I did understand very well. For Kinshasa, you said that you are planning to get 3.2 million registered, but for Katanga, you are planning to get 4 million. While we know that Kinshasa has more population than Katanga. So I don't know if I misunderstood that, but that brings, if I'm right, that brings a clue for suspicion. Thank you.
We'll take the last question. We'll take from Tony. You didn't pick any woman. What's going on? I don't have my glasses on, so you can't accuse me of bias because I can't really see who I'm calling on. So.
My name is Tony Gambino. I'm a consultant. The question is primarily for Pastor Mulunda. Pastor Mulunda, there are obviously some disagreements and concerns, but I think there is one area of agreement that you talked about yourself, which is you have some very serious challenges that you have to think about. We have seen the problems of money. You've talked about that. The other panelists have agreed with you. If you look at the calendar in 2006, or even the calendar that was published earlier by the CEI before the information, and then compare it to your calendar, you can just see that you have much shorter periods of time. And so you just have a great challenge. Also, there was, of course, the tragic plane crash in Kinshasa that happened to kill a number of electoral experts from the international community. So you're having a kind of cascading series of problems that make an already heroic task that much more difficult. Mark Schneider of the Crisis Group talked about the need for an assessment. But I wonder what you think about in this context of putting together something to get a detailed plan and analysis of what is required to meet your calendar. As you know, in 2006, the CEI and MONUC prepared a detailed joint operational plan. And we're able to operate on that and make assessments day by day, week by week. Are you on schedule, are you off schedule, and make adjustments. And to do that, I think you can even see here, and I know it exists elsewhere in Africa and in Europe, some tremendous expertise to assist the people in the Congo, both Congolese as well as the experts that are there, to do this in a way that would be fully transparent and fully credible. And it seems to me that that would end a lot of the questions that many people have. If we could get a transparent plan that everyone could see, then we can see these questions about calendar and meeting the date, and then just try to move forward and get to the outcome that we all want to see of free, fair, and transparent elections, instead of endlessly debating a series of issues when we don't have facts. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Good. We're almost at time, so I'm going to leave you for the wrap-up comments, unless our panelists want to chime in one last word. Mark's going to chime in one last word.
I'm going to chime in just because I want to, there are a couple of questions that haven't been brought forward. One is there's still no electoral law. And we still don't know, for example, whether there are going to be additional criteria for candidates that would limit the participation of different candidates. That seems to me to be an issue that is of great concern. There has not yet been, I don't think, from CENI, a formal agreement that there will be freedom of access for international observers, national civil society observers, and party representatives to each stage of the process, i.e. registration centers, the polling stations, and the counting centers. And it seems to me that that again would enhance the credibility of the process if that were made known ahead of time. And finally, again, I would say it's very important to the degree possible that the workers at the registration centers, the polling tables, that they be as nonpartisan in terms of the actual employees as possible.
Members talked about arrogance. When I reacted, I talked about legitimacy as compared to a former government who came out of negotiations, and so on. Compared to this one, they were elected. That's the fact. You might want it or not, they have been elected. Credibility is another thing. And I cannot go and intervene, defend them on the credibility and so on. It's not my role. My role is to recognize those that have been elected from the poll. So it's not a matter of me being arrogant or being humble. I'm not concerned. I'm not a government guy. And I've never been one, so it's not my concern. My point, a government has been elected. You might want it or not, they have been elected. Now, if they do not deliver the goods, it's time now to give a chance to the people to get them out. You might want it or not, that's the reality. About their credibility, I don't judge them. I'm not part of the government, so it's not mine. The census, we have a serious issue in Congo about the census. For many, many years, the first experience was the voter registration done by CEI, and today with CENI. We are concerned that the Ministry of Home Affairs might have their own file. If they had a file, we would have just gone there and just withdraw those on the edge of voting, and we are gone. Start publish the list, but it does not exist. We are pushing them to have that. And today, myself, I protested. There was an appeal on some part of from the Minister of Home Affairs to start that process. And I saw say in the list, I said, no, we cannot mix the file. It will compromise our independence. Do your own business. It's very important for our country to have a, what we call, dossier fichier d'état civil, and it doesn't exist. As they need to do that, and it will spare us from spending millions of dollars on the same thing. And I hope myself that after this voter registration, we need to keep that file, just start updating it, not wait for the next elections. If people are dead, they remove them, then you are, so it's a mechanism we want to put on place to keep that file alive. Katanga, Kinshasa, I came from these estimates were done before. Last time, Katanga had 3.5 million of voters, 2006. 3.5, Kinshasa had 2.9. That's the last voter registration. We know the reason is because Sekedi boycotted. My friend, I'm giving you the statistic I have. I don't have to speculate. We have figures. We are scientific. 2.9 and 3.5. And they made projection. They can reach 3 point something, and this can reach 4. If the reality comes different, but they're giving equal chances for them to go that. So we're working on figures today. So don't think that I'm putting it because I come from Katanga. That's you underlying. I come from Katanga. I want to privilege my province. No, there are figures. That's the reality that was there. It's transparent. Yeah, Tony, challenges. The challenges are many. We need to face them. And we need to, when I left, first of all, in our offices, we have on the second floor, that's the international community, third floor, ours, first floor, ours. I told them, I'm the only boss here in this house. We need to have now a joint meetings. International community, CENI, what can we do together? As I left, they're putting up now a plan. I talked about what can be done from our side, from the international community, because now we're going towards the line. So there are working groups put together. And I like the idea given there. We can approach it with some resources. For me, I need this election to succeed. It's not one-man show. I'm expecting all the contributions people to give us to come. I'm going to invite the observers. I told the international community that the ambassadors, you are late. You should have brought your observers now to see, are they registering children less than 18 years? Are the political parties having witness in the booths to see if the people are being registered? There's no one today who can certify that the registration went well. I made an appeal to political parties. I made an appeal to the international community. You just want to bring in observers just for the 2 days of the election. No, there is the whole process. My wish is that you can send me observers tomorrow. Those are ready to come. I write an invitation, you come. You need to observe from now. We don't know what's happening in the bushes. They can be registering even kids and so on. You don't have any control. And the political parties don't have people. I found in Kinshasa, in Katanga, for example, I went there, no one from MLC in the voting booths, only UDPS and the local parties in Katanga. UDPS is doing very well in the voting booths. There are people there, but MLC is not there, other political parties are not there, and so on. How can you come and contest? How can you make sure that our people registered and have the voice, the votes? Because for me, the input will be equal to, the output will be equal to the input. So you reap what you planted. I'm telling political parties clearly. So observers, they are most welcome. I'm going to invite them by the end of June to issue letters. They have to come as many as they can. For me, it's very important. Electoral law. The electoral law is a big challenge. I continue challenging the National Assembly to give us the law. I want to clarify. Between now and end of July, there is no impact of the law on the registration. This is why we are confident. But if they leave and they close this session by 15th of June, there is no law, we'll be in trouble. That is clear. And I keep telling them, National Assembly, give me the law. The law will be important. Once I finish cleaning up the file, they need to come back now to divide the seats. That's where the law starts becoming important and how to implement the voting itself. For the time being, we are lucky because in the registration, the law has no direct impact on that one, but we need to work on that. On freedom of movement.
So that's the observer.
for observers and so on. And I myself am committed. I told you about the example of Loja, and I said last time that myself, I'm taking it upon my shoulders. Wherever I will notice from the observers that this area, people have been prevented from going voting, there have been violence, I will cancel myself the polls. I said openly to the nation, I will not tolerate anything. You block people from going to vote, you are creating violence, because I was an observer last time, I saw what happened. They are blocking these people from going, they are creating violence. With Mulunda, that will not happen. I hear that, the observers testified, I just simply cancel the vote, and that office finished. You won't take me anywhere. That's my job. I closed Loja. Loja is the headquarters where people are from the ruling party. All those ministers touching many things, they are there. I closed for 2 weeks. And there's no extension. I said, I'm closing. We have been. You interfered with our work. They wanted to expel the people we sent there to control the elections. They wanted the local people. They expelled them, and I closed the office for 15 days. And there won't be any extension. That's Mulunda. That's me. I'm committed. I have the credibility to build and in order to put. Count on me. You'll see that there will be voted, that will be cancelled, and nobody come back to it. We need to put order. We need to put discipline, and I'm committed to that. Being myself a Methodist, I'll use that. Workers, non-partisan. We just came in the office on March 3rd. Things that were put on place. People have been employed, trained, and so on. We are endorsing what we found. There are things that we're going to just change them. If you start changing everything today, the process will stop. So we need to build those at them. There are a lot of problems there. We need to solve slowly to keep the machine going. There are things that need to be changed. People who have been employed by tribal groups, because we put that one there so that when we have election, we can control. But by the time we finish the registration process, we will change many things. Thank you.
We're at the end of our time. I want to just say thank you very much to the chairman. I know that a lot of challenges here, a lot of, I think, healthy skepticism on the process. I think it does come from the fact that all of us really want to see this election succeed in so far as possible. The question of transparency and consultation, I think this is one example of it. Directly putting those questions to you and having you answer them in a forthright way, I think was very important. I want to thank our panelists for their excellent remarks and context, and Mark for your relentless pushing of the chairman. But again, please join me in thanking the chair, and we hope we can check in with you.